In October 2017, two rival Palestinian factions, Fatah from the West Bank and Hamas from the Gaza Strip, signed a deal that would put an end to a decade-long conflict within Palestinian politics. If the reconciliation deal is actually implemented, the move could signal a shifting point in Palestinian-Israeli relations. So we wanted to know, what are the differences between each of these groups, and what could unification mean for the peace process moving forward? First off, Hamas and Fatah are two Palestinian political groups with very different objectives and approaches. Fatah was formed in the late 1950s by Yasser Arafat, who previously fought against Israel during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. He created the group with the goal of liberating Palestine from Israeli occupation through armed and violent resistance. Over time, Fatah's approach began to soften towards Israel and in the 1990s officially committed to a two-state solution. After abandoning its violent origins in 1993, Arafat signed the historic Oslo Accords, which was the first official mutual recognition between the Palestinians and the Israelis. Although the accord didn't establish an independent Palestinian state, it did transfer some power to a newly formed Palestinian authority to govern over cities in the West Bank and Gaza. Today, Fatah calls for peaceful resistance against Israeli occupation and supports a two-state solution with a secular Palestinian state in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Hamas, however, has a much different objective in mind. The group was formed in 1987 during the first Palestinian Intifada, or uprising. It began as a Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, a transnational Islamist movement that started in Egypt decades prior. Hamas is an extremist group with two separate parts, a political wing and an armed militant wing called the A'iz al-Din al-Qassam Brigades. The militant group has been responsible for multiple suicide bombings inside of Israel and has repeatedly launched indiscriminate rockets across its border. These actions are why Israel and much of the international community classify the group as a terrorist organization, but many in Gaza see the group as a legitimate resistance movement. This, coupled with Hamas's charitable work, which included setting up food banks and social services for Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip, made the political movement incredibly popular. This paved the way for the group to win parliamentary elections in 2006, marking the first time a political party defeated Fatah. Today, Hamas rejects the possibility of a two-state solution and seeks the destruction of Israel altogether, hoping to establish an Islamic Palestinian state where the West Bank, Gaza, and Israel are all located. These objectives have created a stark contrast between Hamas and Fatah. These differences led to a conflict between the groups when Fatah, led by President Mahmoud Abbas, refused to cede power after losing the 2006 election. In June 2007, Hamas took over Gaza by force. Bloody gun battles in the street left more than 100 people dead and 500 injured during the violence. President Abbas shortly after declared a state of emergency and dismissed the unity government. After Hamas took control of Gaza, Israel imposed a harsh blockade on the strip of land, citing security concerns. The action restricted access to Gaza by land, air, and sea, cutting off the flow of goods and supplies to the nearly 2 million citizens living there, and essentially locking them into the tiny strip of land. Human suffering was only exacerbated by a series of brutal Israeli military campaigns in Gaza, meant to target Hamas officials, but collectively left more than 3,000 Palestinians dead. And most recently, living conditions in Gaza have also been severely damaged by the Palestinian Authority, after President Abbas asked Israel to limit the electricity supply to Gaza because it wants Hamas to share the costs. The move has limited Gazans to only a few hours of power per day. Hamas's inability to provide such a basic human necessity has caused its popularity to dip, which led to its cooperation in this latest reconciliation deal. The deal was signed in Cairo, Egypt on October 13, 2017, and stipulated that Fatah will run Gaza until a new administration can be formed by the end of the year. But what hasn't been discussed or included in the deal yet is the fate of the Al-Qassam's brigade, or if Hamas will recognize Israel. These two issues have derailed reconciliation deals in the past and could have the potential to derail them again if Hamas decides not to disarm and recognize Israel. If the deal goes through without Hamas doing these two things, the entire Palestinian Authority would then be considered a terrorist organization by Israel and the United States and would lose more than $400 million in aid annually. But if it does disarm and recognize Israel, it could signal a pivotal moment in history for the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. But only time will truly tell whether this deal will be different than previous failed efforts over the last 10 years. Palestine has been in an uphill battle politically and economically since the 1940s. So with its status still in limbo, how powerful is Palestine? To find out, check out this video to the right. Thanks for checking out NowThis World. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more episodes like this every week.